Good morning, everybody. My name is Roy Kessel. I am the founder of the Sports Philanthropy Network. And today we are very excited to have with us the team from Good Sports. We've got Max Jensen, Patrick Norris, and Amber Kilberg that have joined us today to talk about their programs. Before we turn it over to them, I want to tell you a little bit more about the network. Our goal is to build stronger, healthier, and more inclusive communities through sports. So we try and help support organizations that are doing great work in their communities by providing media coverage, professional development, and education programs for those organizations. Our goal is to help elevate their work so that they can service more kids and ultimately make a greater impact in their community. We encourage you to find us on social media. We're very active on everything: LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. You can find a lot of our past events both on our website and on all of those mediums. So we encourage you to connect with us in that fashion. One of the other things that we do is these weekly webinars. So we're very excited for Good Sports today. Next week, we have a big town hall on racism and reform. And so we've got speakers from around the country. We've got a number of panels. So we hope you'll check that out on the events section on our website and look at all the great presenters that we have for some really in-depth conversations on a lot of the issues that this country is dealing with now. And we want to make sure we take it beyond talk and create some action and task force items out of that. The other things that you can do to look at what we put out is every week on Monday, we put out a weekly newsstand, and that has an array of articles from around the country and really all over the world in terms of work that's being done in the sports philanthropy space, tips in terms of improving your work for your organization. And then we also have a monthly newsletter that goes out with some of our upcoming events and more details like that. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to Patrick and Max and let them start the introduction. If you have questions, feel free to jump in. Otherwise, you can drop them in the chat, and I will jump in and ask Patrick and Max as we go along. And I know that they've got some incredible programs going on right now, and really some good news to share that I think just came out recently. So, guys, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having us, Roy.
Thanks so much, Roy. Yeah, like you mentioned, our mission aligns really well with what you do and what all the programs in your network do. So we're so excited to be here today. So with that being said, I'll jump into the very brief slideshow. This is just meant to give you a real overview of what Good Sports does and how it kind of aligns with what not only you do, Roy, but with all the programs that are joining us today with what you all do. And then we'll open it up to questions and answers and a discussion portion where we can really try to figure out how we best align and what we can do to help your programs best moving forward. So at Good Sports, we aim to give all kids a chance to play. We believe that play is a right, not a privilege. So play is not something that kids should just get at school during recess or during their after school programming or during a summer camp. We think that play is something that kids should have access to no matter where they grow up, no matter what situation they have at home. That play is a right and not a privilege. And that's kind of what Good Sports is built on foundationally. And our mission at Good Sports is to give all kids the lifelong benefit of sport and physical activity by providing new equipment, apparel, and footwear to those most in need. So a couple things in that mission I want to touch on. The first thing is that the all kids part, like I mentioned, we really believe that play is a right and not a privilege. And then the new equipment is something that I think sets us apart. We're really lucky to work directly with most of the larger equipment manufacturers and distributors around. So the equipment that we distribute and are lucky enough to have access to is all brand new name brand stuff. It's really, really high quality. If the equipment isn't nice enough to be used by ourselves, we wouldn't send it out to the youth and to the programs that we work with. So it's something that sets us apart, is that this is all brand new, name brand, great quality equipment that we get donated to us by our equipment manufacturers, and we turn right around and distribute it out to the youth serving programs that we work with in our networks. So like I mentioned, we kind of serve as the intermediary at Good Sports between those large equipment manufacturers and youth serving direct service organizations that provide sports or physical activity programming. So you can think of us, if it's easier, as kind of being a food pantry. So we collect those goods, that apparel, that footwear, and we turn right around and offer it to the programs that have been approved by us, which just means programs that we can confirm, are doing work in the communities, are serving the demographics that we're looking to serve, and do qualify and are in need of this equipment. The equipment that we receive and then distribute is aimed towards kids ages 6 to 18. So obviously that's the whole gamut between elementary schools to high schools to Boys and Girls Clubs to YMCAs to Parks and Rec departments. We are very open in our process. We want to impact all types of sports, all types of fitness activities, regardless of if you're, a huge program in a national network or a tiny mom and pop shop working to help the kids in your neighborhood. We are really open to any sort of program who are providing these types of activities and who are impacting kids, and we don't ever want size or cost to be a barrier that would limit your program from receiving equipment. So whether it's receiving 3 pairs of socks to help the 3 kids in your new program that you just started up in your neighborhood, or receiving 2,000 t-shirts to help every single kid in your larger network organization that you work with, we want to impact all those different programs. So like I mentioned, some of the typical programs that we work with and we have a lot of in our system are Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCAs, community centers, schools, recreational programs, and then sports-based youth development programs. And lastly, in this section, I just want to touch on the COVID-19 crisis right now and how strange and difficult programming is for every organization that we serve and that we work with. So we certainly realize that we're doing our best to adjust as we are able. And we know that lots of programmings are getting really creative and offering some really unique programs where they're, having Zoom workouts with their kids, or they're practicing social distancing with some new types of activities that they might be able to offer outside. So we're trying to be as flexible as we can be with our offerings. We're learning just like you all are at this time. And we're doing the best we can to kind of accommodate those new needs. And there's things that are popping up every day that we're trying to figure out how we can best serve kids at this tough time. So that's something that we have a keen focus on right now. We're trying to figure out the best way that we can support the programs working with these kids. So we are definitely open to any questions or ideas that may come up from that whole thing. But for now, I'm going to pass it over to Patrick, who's going to mercifully give you all a break from hearing me talk.
Thank you, Max. Just looking at our impact, since Good Sports was founded in 2003, we have served over 4,200 organizations. I know Max touched upon a lot of the similar programs that we'll work with: schools, YMCAs, Boys and Girls Clubs, nonprofit organizations. So we served over 4,200 since 2003. We have donated $57 million in equipment value, served all 50 states and Puerto Rico. I know the last 2 years we've had events in Puerto Rico where we served many programs down there. And I think the most important number here for myself is over 7 million kids since 2003. It's in the mission to give all kids a chance to have the opportunity to play sports. So I think that's a very important number to see that we've been able to accomplish that since 2003. And I think that goes through the great work that the organizations we work with, they're determined to get the kids on the field. That's why they're reaching out to us. And also the great equipment partners we have that allow us to distribute that value and equipment to those kids. Thanks, Max. So how the program is set up here when organizations are reaching out to us, they first must apply on our website to see if they meet the criteria and eligibility to work with us over a 2-year window. Important to note on the application, it's an open application. there's no hard deadline for when you need to submit an application to, hopefully work with us. It does close down every year in December just for site maintenance on the application. But other than that, it's open throughout the year. Again, no hard deadline to apply. So I think it's good to kind of review it, look at some of the questions, and if you need to reach out to anyone else in your organization to gather some of that information, you have time to do that. There's no pressure for it to be submitted or rushed through it. Programs that are approved, they work with us for the 2 years. They're eligible for 6 donations over those 2 years. What those donations look like can vary. Like Max said, if it's 3 pairs of socks for a program for one of their donations, that can be one donation of their 6, or it could be the 2,000 t-shirts that they want to allocate to the kids. That can be one donation of the 6. So it really varies on your program, what we have in our inventory, and what you're looking to do with each of the 6 donations. Programs that are approved have access to our online catalog and what our online inventory is, and they can submit a request right through the catalog. We're receiving new items and new inventory throughout the year. There's no way of telling on what's coming in, or there's no really timeline to follow what items will be available when, which is why we give programs who work with the 2 years. Hopefully, in that 2-year window, there's time for them to utilize their 6 donations and get some of their top needed items. And you'll be working one-on-one with the Good Sports representative, either myself or my colleagues, Candace and Molly. If you submit a request or even the application, we follow up with you with any updates or any further information we need. Programs that are approved, they submit the request and we follow up with them one-on-one to work through what the donation looks like, give them all their next steps and information, such as the release form and then the shipping and handling fee. That is 5% of what the value of the donation would be. And to make note on this too, we definitely never want cost to be a barrier between programs receiving equipment or not. So we do have procedures in place and flexible to work with programs and making sure that, they're receiving the equipment to help get kids in the game. So any questions on any of the information we just shared for either myself or Max?
Yeah, so I'd love to have you go back and maybe help us walk through a couple steps. So the first would be if we could look at maybe share, if you could pull up the application and kind of walk us through what the application consists of.
Definitely.
I think that would be helpful. And then the second part that I know after we're done with that would be very helpful for people would be to be able to see what the inventory overview looks like in terms of what would they be able to see once they're approved as an organization and they could go in there to be able to get a feel for what that looks like.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can share my screen and go over the application with you guys. Alrighty, so could everybody see the main webpage here? All right, so yeah, first step, just come to goodsports.org. Max mentioned, we're doing some work related to COVID-19, so this would pop up. You can read it or close it out. And then on the top tab, you just go to apply. It's important to read through all this information here prior to submitting the application. Talks a lot about what we're looking for in the application and also some of the criteria and how our program is set up. So when you come to the bottom, there's going to be 2 different applications. So one would be for community organizations and then one would be for schools. So this is pretty straightforward. If you're a school, you would fill out the school application. If you're not a school, you would fill out the community organization application. There's just a few different questions related to school, such as free reduced lunch rate that wouldn't be needed for the community organization application. So we can take it.
Could we just go back up for a minute there?
Yep.
Because I think it's important for everybody to look at kind of the criteria that are involved here. So if you are looking for your organization, or for those of us and on the Sports Philanthropy team and the interns that are helping us identify organizations, these are the main criteria that we need to keep in mind in terms of the age range. The participation fee is a big one because there's a lot of youth sports programs that in today's world are charging significantly more than that. And those are usually travel sports programs and other things like that that are not eligible for this because they're primarily focused on competitive sports and that travel type of landscape. So it's important to make sure that as you're looking for your own organization, or as we're looking for groups that we're partnering with, that we understand what these criteria are. And then especially these sort of exclusions for the sports camps, tournaments, and the walking and running event types of
Yeah,
events. So that's sort of like marathons, 5Ks, those
right.
types of things.
Yeah, so we'll see some applications that come through for that. So it's good just to clarify that in this last bullet here. It's just a program that has consistent programming, throughout the year. Obviously sports are seasonal, but it's more of not, having those one-offs that are just doing a 5K walk to raise funds for something. And then regarding the first bullet is, your organization directly serves youth between the ages of, 3 and 18. So the importance of that is we want to work with programs that would get the equipment and get it straight to the kids. Sometimes we'll see booster clubs apply for high schools. They're not the ones directly supporting the kids through the athletics and put it on. So we would need, in that case, the application to come in from the school. And that's something we would do. We would, see that application, reach out to that person and just notify them if, they can work with someone in the athletic department at the school or in the administration side at the school and work on getting an application in. And I think we'll go into it in the school application. It's not listed here, but if a school is applying, we want that application to encompass the total school, everything that the school has going on in terms of sports and physical education programming. Once in a while, we'll see an application come in, maybe from the football team or the softball team. Again, we want to make sure we can impact as many kids as we can through those 6 donations. So it's important to, get all the information in that would encompass the entirety of the school.
I think the other point that's important to note here is that, as you reference, individual athletes cannot apply. And so if you're working with kids who are in need and have equipment, I would encourage them to coordinate that through their organization or through their program, because certainly the program can make that request. And the likelihood is that's probably not the only athlete in that program
Right.
that could use some equipment. And oftentimes people feel they're alone and that they're left on an island and that they don't have a resource. And the likelihood is that there's other kids in that program that are facing similar situations and would really be able to benefit. So bringing it to the attention of the organization would be great as a way for them to get involved. Thanks.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So as we mentioned, in the presentation, if an approved organization, you'll gain access to the catalog of the available inventory. I know Max will go over that with us in just a few minutes. And then again, the 6 donations over the 2-year period.
So one question that we just got, that I just got in the chat is,
Yep.
What's the percentage? In other words, what's the scale of applications you get in an average year? And then what percentage of those would you say are approved?
Yeah, I don't have an exact number on the approval percentage, but in terms of applications a week, I think as an organization, it varies throughout the year. But I would say on average, probably 25 to 30 applications a week that we're seeing throughout the year. And we look at them all on an individual basis. There's no quota, like we're only going to approve 65%. We look at them as their own individual application to assess the need from there, because each application does vary and programs are applying for different reasons.
And then the other question that I just wanted to clarify before you go on is it references 6 requests over a 2-year period for the organization. So help us walk through and understand what that consists of. Obviously for a school that could just be different sports seasons. So spring, fall, winter, spring sports. But for other organizations, it sounds like they have to be careful not to make we'll call it a small request and use up one of their 6 slots.
Yeah, yeah, those are good points. I think, working with programs one-on-one, you're able to understand what their need is and what, maybe their budget is with the ship and handle fee and kind of what the overall goal is with these donations. Some programs will, if they have the ability to store equipment for a few months, if they see something they need, they'll jump on and make that request because they know it's an item they're going to be using in a few months. Well, others like schools are more like by the season, if school's coming back in session, they're probably focusing on those fall sports. So again, those equipment requests when they're in the catalog, it could look different for every program. And we'll work with them and determine, and again, what their need is and what the ultimate goals with these 6 donations are. And then we can kind of help come up with a game plan and how we can best utilize those 6 donations, whether if it's adding to a donation or reducing the donation and spreading out over a few to kind of give them some wiggle room with the shipment handling fee, and then also just the storage part of it as well.
I just got another question here about rec leagues, and the question is that some of the rec leagues, typically football and cheerleading, it sounds like, even though they may be in lower income areas, charge more than $2.99. And so the question is that a firm limit, and how was that limit kind of set? Obviously, if this Good Sports has been going on for quite some time, so
yeah,
that might have been a good number, let's just say in 2003. I don't know how often that's reevaluated.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this has been reevaluated for the past few years, and I think that number, it's trying to average all the sports. Each sport's going to be different costs. We know football is probably going to cost more to play, soccer or basketball in that case. And again, our goal is to work with the programs that are doing the most they can to support the kids and get them in the game, and we can support them even further. And what we too look at in the application as well, which we can show, is even if the fee is let's say $275, of that $275, how many of the kids are being charged for that and then receiving financial assistance? Is it being waived in total, or are they getting scholarships? So that's something we take into consideration when we're reviewing applications is, okay, what's your fee? And then what is, the financial assistance that you're providing for those kids?
And then, not to be sort of the lawyer on the looking at the fine print, but it references a participation fee of $2.99. Do you have any problems with organizations, in my words, hiding fees? In other words, saying the participation fee is only $250, but now you have an equipment fee of $150, and you've got a travel fee of something else, so that really the total cost is way above $2.99, but they're trying to disguise it to stay within that limit.
Yeah, we're pretty diligent when it comes to our applications and reviewing them and going on to, if it's a website they have or social media, to see if there's any fees outside of the $2.99 that would bring them over $300. That's a good point. A lot of programs will just list maybe $200, which can be the sign-up fee, the registration fee. But then again, they might have maybe a $200 fee for travel and tournaments, another $100 deposit for equipment. So we take all that into account when reviewing the application. And if the information's there, we'll use it to, for our best judgment in these applications.
Great. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions before I just go through the application?
No, okay. I think go ahead. If people message me, I'll shout them out. Otherwise, people jump in as they need it.
Awesome. So we'll look at the community organization application. So my first recommendation would be if a program is going to work on an application. Unfortunately, there's no save feature on the application, and you can see it's pretty lengthy in terms of the number of fields that you would need to fill out. So what I would do is copy and paste it into a Word document or some sheet that you can have it saved on your computer. That way, if you are coordinating with someone else within your organization to complete the application, you can kind of gather all the information first, then go back in and type it in these fields and have the application submitted. Unfortunately, sometimes a program will type it in, they'll leave the web page, come back, and it's no longer there. So that's kind of just a technical tip, is just to maybe copy and paste that information somewhere while working on the application. So it could be efficient when submitting. So looking at the community application, a lot of it's straightforward information that the program will have to fill out: their name, contact information, websites, email, social media, if you have any, location. To me, I review applications. I think some of the most important information comes from these open-ended questions. It allows programs to kind of tell their story and what their need is for equipment and what they're hoping to accomplish if they do get approved for the 6 donations over the 2 years. Again, pretty straightforward questions. I always advise as much detail as possible in these questions. Again, going down to section 3, straightforward information regarding the program that is applying. Right here, you'll see the question of, does your program charge a fee to participate? You answer yes or no. How much is the fee? If you're a school, you don't want to charge a fee, just enter 0. And then, do any participants receive the financial assistance? If you do offer it, that'd be awesome. And then in here, you just type in, again, what percentage. And that allows us to see kind of, the work the program's doing to ensure kids can play on the field and get into the game. And sometimes here at program, they might not write, they might put 0 in. They're not maybe sure what financial assistance means, but they'll put in this open box here. They say, oh, a coach will cover the fee if a child's family's having a hard time covering it. So we take that into, even if they listed 0 here or they say no, we'll still look at this and say, okay, they really are getting kids in the game, so that does count for something when looking at the application. What is the organization's budget to purchase sports equipment? This kind of gives us a good idea of, what capabilities, the program has with money, and, what the gap is there to help, for them to help get kids in the game and get them the appropriate equipment. Schools would be the same thing, same type of question, but it'll be just related to the athletic department and then also physical education. They could be 2 separate budgets at schools, one for PE equipment for classes, and, for the athletics, they'll have a different budget as well. And then just some information of how the organization is set up gives us a good understanding of the structure that lies within a program. Again, these are just questions for us to have, information on, if you have, if it's a small program and you have 2 people and 1 volunteer, that's fine. That's not going to, that's not going to determine you getting, approved or rejected in the application. It's just to have that information to see how programs are operating. And then here's a good question here is to check off your top 3 challenges. You'll have the list of options here. And this allows us to see, all right, if, they had to pick any 3, where do they need the most help in, and what can we do to help them in that area? And you'll see all these are listed right here. And they vary for programs, type of program, location of the program, and what their ultimate goal is. Same thing listed here as an important question is, do you hold tryouts for any of your programs? It's fine, if a program's holding tryouts just to assess. I know a lot of little leagues do it just to place kids on teams, and, schools as well. But if it's a travel team and they're cutting kids, or if it's AAU and they're, selecting certain kids to play, based on skill and, for the team to win, those are programs we typically won't support. We're supporting programs that's doing everything they can to help kids play sports. And then we, again, like I mentioned, support them even further and help them get equipment into their hands. Another good question is here is, do you have to limit participation due to a lack of equipment? So if you had more equipment in hand, would that mean more kids would get to play? This is good information to have and to really assess where a program stands. Again, some more, direct information that we ask for. How often does a program meet? Gives us a good understanding of what that consistent program looks like. Making sure nothing slips through the cracks where it is maybe a one-time, event that's not going to continue on after the year. Demographics allows us to see the kids, the ages of the kids and their backgrounds. You can fill this information out as accurate as you can. I know a lot of times it's tough for schools to do it. If it's an athletic department working on it, they don't know the full details, so they'll fill it into the best of their knowledge. It just gives us a good understanding of the kids that they're working with. Let's see here. And 2, kind of looking at in that criteria is they're working with disadvantaged communities. A good way to look at it is if it's a school, we're looking at the free reduced lunch rate. We're looking at if they're charging a fee for sports, and also what are the top neighborhoods or towns they're serving. And we kind of see what that average poverty rate is. It's not the end all be all, but it gives us a good, a good guideline to go off of when looking at the programs that we work with. And again, just some final information, how did you find out about us? Like if you guys were to apply, you would put down this webinar and this network as, how you found out about Good Sports. And at the bottom here, which is a very important part of the application, for programs and ourselves, is you'll have the opportunity to list your top 5 items of need. This isn't the list of equipment that you would receive if you're approved. What it is, it tells us this is what the program's top 5 needs are. If we have them in our inventory, that's great. We can go ahead and, hopefully get those donated out. If not, it gives us a good list to go off of when we're working with those equipment partners that Max mentioned with, hey, we have these certain equipment gaps in maybe soccer balls and volleyballs, and we have these many programs that are in need of them. That allows us to bring that information to the forefront to our partners to hopefully get some of those items in the inventory during the 2 years. And then at the bottom, just last chance to make a case. And then here you acknowledge the requirement to sign the release form and then the 5% shipping and handling fee. Then you just, submit it from here. And then from there, it will come to a Good Sports representative's end to review. We try to get all applications reviewed within a 2-week window. And then we would follow up with any questions we have on reviewing the application. If we need any further clarification, and then also too, programs can definitely reach out to us directly too when they submit an application. If there's anything maybe they forgot to add or they had a question about or any issues with when working on the application, we're definitely here to help them out, through the process. So that's all I had on the application.
One of the other questions that just got posted was about donations to programs that are outside of the United States. So is that something that you do work with? This particular program reference was in India for 700 kids. I didn't know what you did outside of the country. I know there's a lot of groups that contact us from Africa and from other places, and it's a challenge for them to get that equipment.
Yeah, so at this time we're working with programs that are in the United States. I think due to shipping and what those costs look like, and that's kind of within our limits right now. As mentioned, we've done events and gotten equipment out to programs, throughout Puerto Rico the last 2 years. That's definitely more of a one-off situation, but it is programs that are within, the 50 states.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions on the application before I throw it back over to Max to kind of go over the catalog?
So this, the one you went through was for the organizations, right? Not for the schools?
Yep.
Could we just go through the school one
yeah, definitely.
quickly just to see the differences there?
Yeah. So once you come back to the page, so I can show you guys, hit schools. And it's good to read this information that we went over. Schools must apply as a whole. Applicants for individual programs or teams within the school will not be considered. And you would know that if you were to submit an application, we reach out and let you know. And then again, if your school has a physical education program, be sure to include that information for the entire student population of the school, not just the students on the school's athletics team. Because again, we want to make sure we can impact as many kids as possible at that school, and we're not leaving anyone out. Application format is the exact same in terms of how it relates to the community application. Here, there's a different question. Please provide an overview of the school. You can talk about history, your accomplishments, the values of the school. Gives us a good understanding of, how the schools are set up and how they're working with their kids through academics and also athletics. And then just scrolling down, again, all the questions are the same. And then let's see, does the school offer a recess program? How many weeks per year does the recess program meet? This is probably more for, it depends. When I was in middle school and high school, we only had recess in middle school, but we weren't allowed to play any sports. But in elementary school, we definitely were out there with the football or soccer ball. So it's good to have that information as regards to elementary schools. Again, same questions here in section 3. As we saw in the community organization. And then the one different question right here, down here, would be what percentage of the students receive free reduced lunch. So you can put in, your best, guess at that number if you don't have it. We do some research on our end too to see what that number actually is. And if there's any issues with it and we might need further information, I know schools typically have the documents on hand that would verify that information of what the reduced lunch rate is for that school. And again, as I mentioned, the two different budgets. So you got what your school's PE equipment budget is, and then what the school's athletic budget is, just to see how they differ with their resources for those sports. And then the bottom of the application, the exact same, the top 3 challenges. Here, do you hold tryouts for kids? That's usually going to be a yes for schools just because of the space, but they're still offering gym classes and recess. So it's not that they're limited participation for kids. It's, it's a space issue and most of the time an equipment issue with not having enough equipment for the kids. Section 4, demographics, set up the same exact way. And then looking at section 5, where did you hear about Good Sports? Same as the community organization application. And then again, your top 5 items that you guys are in need of at that time with the quantities. And then bottom of the application, same thing, make your case, check the acknowledgement box and submit the application for it to be reviewed. Any questions on that?
No, thank you. I think that's great.
Awesome. All right, so I will throw it over to Max now. So I'm just going to stop sharing here.
Awesome. So once your program is approved, Patrick or whoever your representative is will reach out to you and send you all sorts of information, including our Good Sports approved organization portal, which will have a link to our catalog. So for now, I'm going to show you the catalog. I'll walk you through the real basics of kind of what it looks like and the basics of how to use it. And then if there's any questions after that, we can go through that too. But for now, I will share my screen once again. So this is our portal, our catalog. And I want to point out a couple things before we jump in and start looking through equipment. The first of which is that we certainly realize that this is not going to be the most beautiful web page in the world. We're still obviously always working on improving how this looks, how it feels, how it works, to make it the best tool to connect the organizations we serve with the equipment we offer. But for now, it works. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but it does work. So apologies in advance if this hurts your eyes to look at any point. And then the other thing I want to point out is since we are a nonprofit that relies on the generosity of the equipment partners that we work with, the experience of looking through our catalog is not going to be the same as your typical online shopping experience. We're not going to have every single item that your teams are looking for at all time. Since we do rely on the generosity of our partners, we're just essentially going to have the equipment that's been donated to us at that time. It's very cyclical. It comes in ebbs and flows. We can't guarantee that we're going to get football equipment donated right before the football season. There might be times when we get it donated right after the football season, because that's when equipment manufacturers are more willing to donate that equipment to us. So one thing that we suggest for our approved programs is set up a time so you're regularly inside our catalog checking it out, because there's not necessarily a time when we can guarantee you we'll have the most football equipment, or we can promise you that if you need it, a month before your season and you log in then for the first time in a year, that you'll definitely see all the equipment you need. So we recommend regularly being in the catalog, maybe setting a reminder so you're in there once or twice a month. And that goes in handy with your up to 6 equipment requests over the 2-year period, because there might be a time, like Patrick mentioned, where it's still 6 months until your season. But if you see a bunch of football equipment that your program really needs, then that might be the perfect time to submit one of your requests. So just keep that in mind as we're looking at this catalog. It's not going to be an extensive list of every single item that you will ever need for your program, but we're doing everything we can to get all the equipment that we can into our catalog, and we obviously want to get it sent out to you right when we do get it. So once your program is approved, you'll be sent your username and password from Patrick or from whoever your Good Sports representative is. I'm going to enter mine now. Password right the first time. All right, it's a good day. I did get my password right the first time. So this is kind of the home page of the catalog and what this is going to look like. There's a couple different things that I want to point out to you on this page. First, you'll notice right here, big in the middle, are our featured items. Oftentimes what this means is that these are items that It could either be new, we just got an awesome new shipment of something and we want to show it off. This could be something that is maybe a really high value item or a different item that we're not used to getting. I think an example of that are the Adidas soft shell helmets that you can see right at the top. This is definitely a new item that is it's pretty darn valuable. So we wanted to make sure that programs knew that we had these. Or this could be equipment that we think works for a lot of different sports that we want to make sure that, if you're going to poke around in your specific sports area, we don't want you to miss this just in case it's not something that might typically be associated with your sport. So that could go for the socks or the youth training shorts in this section. If you're a PE teacher and you look straight in the physical education section, just because you don't see the socks or the training shorts in there doesn't mean that your program can't use them. So I'm going to point out a couple things on this page before we move on, and I'm going to annotate to do so. So apologies in advance for my horrible annotation skills. But let me see. Okay, so this first thing, I'm doing white boxes. How do I change the color on this? Anyway, so you can see there's a price box in the top right. And it says NA, and that is again due to our nonprofit status. We can't disclose how much this equipment, is valued at while you're looking at our catalog. As Patrick mentioned, there is, a 5% shipping and handling fee that goes along with our donations. So once you have some items selected and you submit your cart, that is then a conversation that we'll have with you. We'll let you know what your fee is. And we certainly understand that, the guessing game means that there might be times when the fee is higher than you're expecting or lower than you're expecting. And we are always willing to have that conversation. That's definitely something where just because you're submitting a cart or you're requesting equipment does not by any means finalize an agreement that you will be receiving exactly that equipment, that it's going to be shipping and arriving the next day or anything like that. All it means is that when you're submitting that cart is that you are essentially saying, hey, here's equipment that I'm interested in, and I would like to have a discussion with the Good Sports team about this equipment, seeing how I can get it. So that's one thing I want to point out, is because we run into issues frequently where people or programs think that, just because they submit a cart, that means that by all means they will be receiving that equipment, or they can't change their donation, or they're officially committed to receiving that. And that's just not the case. So we wanted to make sure that's nice and clear. Another thing would be, I want to point out real quickly this available items section over here. And yes, I finally figured out how to change the color of my annotation, so I'm pretty proud of myself. Like I mentioned, we try to make it easier for you to find specific items by breaking them down into sport. But by all means, just because you're a baseball program, please feel free to also check out the physical education section, check out maybe the track and field section to see if there's, agility or training equipment that you could use in there. By all means, we're not trying to limit you to just looking at your section. We don't want you to miss out on any equipment because, you think you can only use things in one section, but there is equipment that you need elsewhere. Let's say we're going to check out a specific sport now. Let's go to the football page. Once you click on this, you'll see 3 separate sections with lovely visuals to go along with them, of course. So we have the football apparel, the footwear, and the equipment section. You'll see this under each of the subcategories. Let's say we want football equipment today. And this will be a good example of, here are some items that we have. Obviously, this is not a list of every single football item that a program could use. But these could be a few different things. If you're looking to offer a flag football program, or if you're a PE program and you want some junior footballs, these could be some really helpful items that could potentially impact your program. So for instance, I'll just show you real quickly how this works if you do want to submit an equipment request. As you can see the sizes here, but what you can't see right off the bat is quantities, and that's something that we're still working on. But let's say you're looking for an extra large. What you're going to do is you're going to hit add to cart, and then once an item is in the cart is where you can see the quantities. So it's a little clunky. We certainly realize that there's some give and take, but once you go to your cart here, then you can see how many of these we do have in stock. So right now it does say that you have 1 in the cart, but as you can see from this section, the options section, if you wanted, 100 for each of the kids in your program, we certainly have enough of the extra large helmets to accommodate that. So you can change the quantities here. You can remove items from your cart here. So one of the things that I would suggest doing is when you're, browsing the catalog, if there's items that you see that you think you could possibly use, go ahead and add them to your catalog. And then when you're trying to get serious as to, okay, which equipment do I want to move forward with? Once you have them in the cart, that's the best way to move forward with submitting that request. You can say, okay, they have a lot of these, so I can get as many as I need. I was hoping that they would have shorts for every kid in my program, but since they don't, maybe I'll remove the shorts from my cart. So this is kind of where you can do the mixing and the matching and the adjusting of your equipment to make the donation that makes the most sense for your program. Real quick, let's just say that I was going to submit this cart, that I was interested in moving forward with this. You would hit the proceed to checkout button. And again, this is not at all making this official saying you will definitely receive this equipment. But what it does when you submit your cart officially is it essentially holds that equipment for your program. So if you were worried about if there's only 100 of these helmets left and you wanted to make sure that your program could get at least 20 of them, then by submitting your cart officially, which would be at the bottom of the screen, you would hit yes and officially submit my cart. Then you would essentially just be holding 20 of those for your program to receive if indeed you were interested in receiving them. But a couple things quickly on this page, just make sure that your addresses are correct, obviously the shipping and billing address. And then this section where we ask you some questions about the donation and about your program is an important section for us because this helps us get a better idea of why you are requesting the equipment that you're requesting and how you're going to be using this equipment. So when you're filling this out, think about the equipment that you're requesting specifically today, maybe not your entire program as a whole, but how you're going to use this flag football equipment. Because what that will do, one, it'll help us verify that you can actually use the equipment that's in your cart, that you understand how it all should be used and what it's meant for. But another reason that I think it's really helpful to fill this section out fully is because since we're receiving equipment all the time, if you let Patrick know in this cart that you are really looking for all things flag football related, Patrick might have insight that we're actually getting a big shipment next week that will have a ton of flag football stuff. And Patrick might reach out to you and say, hey, I know you need these helmets. If you wanted to hold off a couple of days, I might also be able to get you flag football belts or game jerseys or whatever it might be that could be coming into our warehouse. So that's just something I like to point out. The more information you can give us both on the application and at this stage when you're about to submit your cart, the better and the more customized and specific for your program we can try to make this donation. So real quickly at the bottom of this screen, if I wanted to go ahead and submit this cart, I would obviously just hit the submit request button. And again, what that does, that doesn't commit you to receiving this equipment or paying a fee or anything of that nature. It would send a note to your Good Sports representative. So, it would send a note to someone like Patrick and it would say, hey, this program is interested in receiving this equipment. And then Patrick would go on from there and have a conversation with you about making sure that that equipment is what you actually wanted, making sure you understand the timelines, all that fun stuff. So I know that's a whole bunch of information. That was probably a little too in the weeds at some parts of this process. But for now, while we're looking at the catalog, is there anything or any questions that I can help answer while we're right here?
Yeah, I had a couple questions that got popped into the chat here for me. So the first is the inventory. Is that available before somebody's applied and been approved for them to see?
It is not available. That's kind of one of the specialties of being an approved program is that then we then send you access to the inventory catalog. We are always willing to have conversations about types of equipment with program though. So if you were a field hockey program who was potentially thinking about applying, you can always reach out to us and say, hey, what field hockey equipment have you had in the past? Do you expect that this is something that could lead to multiple donations in the future? And we'll try to be honest and transparent, and I'll tell you that we've had some field hockey equipment, but not a ton of field hockey equipment. We don't have any guaranteed donations of field hockey equipment coming into our field house that we know of in the next couple months. So that's like just an example of a conversation that we are always willing to have. And one thing I want to point out is if your organization does get approved in our system and you are able to access the catalog, you are by no means obligated to use all 6 of your donations. You don't have to use a single one of your donations if you want. So if you get approved and you're a field hockey program and you see our catalog and say, boy, none of this equipment is really working for us right now, then you don't at any point feel like you have to submit a request to stay as an active program in our system or because you're obligated to receive anything. That's not how it works. So essentially you can think of once your program is approved, then you just have the option to receive donations from us if you're interested in moving forward.
Right. I think the concern would be more whether they want to invest the time to go through the whole application process before they know. So that's helpful to be able to have that conversation with you. And would they reach out directly to you, Max, or is there a different contact person that
Best way on our website, we have a main contact us feature that is kind of a community inbox that we all share, and whoever has the best answer, whoever has the idea at the time, or would be your representative moving forward, will be the one who responds to you and kind of works with you moving forward on figuring out if it makes sense for you to apply, what types of equipment we might have in the future. So we connect you with the right person to kind of help you throughout the whole process, so we're not hitting you back and forth between a bunch of people.
Great. Then I had, let's see, a couple other questions here. Once somebody submits a request to you for they go through, they get approved, and then they submit a request. I guess it's two things. One is, how long does it take the application typically to get reviewed and approved? And then second would be request for specific equipment that's in there. How long would that take to get approved?
Yeah, I can help answer those. The application, it's, we say that the 2 weeks when a program submits the application, we ask for 2 weeks to review it. I know personally myself is I get back within those 2 weeks on reviewing the applications. And then in regards to the equipment request and submitting this cart, I try to follow up as quick as possible within the day or the next day afterwards, just because I know the program submitted the cart for a reason. I want to get that information for them that they're waiting on is, what the fee is, what equipment we can donate. And I can speak for Molly and Candice. They're both awesome as well, that we definitely will get back to the programs as soon as we can. And again, just because everything, in terms of doing the donation applications online, we're really personal. So if you just, send us a quick email or give us a quick call saying, hey, I just submitted a cart, we'll jump on the phone with you and go over those next steps with the program.
Great. The next question I have is about adaptive sports programs. So if you look at whether you've done any work with adaptive sports programs, Doug Garner, who's on this call, works at University of Texas, Arlington. And Doug, if you want to jump on and be more specific, but I think that there's a lot of equipment that you have, and I don't know how many adaptive sports programs you work with.
Yeah, so as far as those programs go, I know we definitely have a few that we work with. And again, I think it relates to most programs is we're not going to have all the items that the program may need, but our hope is that there's something that they can use in this inventory that would be beneficial to the kids and hopefully alleviate some, maybe some funds on their end, or they can direct resources a different way. So I know we serve a few of those programs in terms of the specific equipment. I'm not sure how much we would get in and what those equipment look like, but our goal is hopefully if it's apparel items or something they can use, like a basketball, soccer ball, that we get it donated out to them.
Great. Next question I have relates to sort of turnaround time on the equipment shipping, right? So if I go in there today and I fill out my wish list of this is what I could use for my organization, what's a normal or an expected turnaround time?
Yeah, I mean, we have a great warehouse team that's in there every day packing up donations and shipping. Right now, the timeline's a little hard to gauge just because our warehouse was closer 3 months and there was a lot of catch up for them to get donations out. So we're, prioritizing those donations. But I mean, just speaking from experience, before everything kind of went crazy, we were shipping out within that week or the week after. And right now, I think it's kind of the same thing, but there's definitely that communication and letting the program know when we're going to be working on shipping, and then they get direct communication from FedEx. And once something does ship, they get all that tracking information so they can, see it come out. And two, if they needed it immediately, we definitely can make that a high priority and work with the warehouse team and getting that equipment out for them.
And then I think from my end, the last question I have is you guys obviously have a very detailed system, amazing amount of items, and you've serviced an incredible number of kids. So is there a maximum donation over that 2-year window, or a maximum per one of those 6 requests? Just in terms of an organization trying to budget and plan for what they can request and how that would need to be structured?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's no maximum amount, financially of like what the value is. What the amounts would come to is based on the number of kids your program serves and how we allocate equipment. So for example, let's say your program serves 100 kids. If we have apparel items like socks and t-shirts, well, if we have in our inventory, we can donate one for each of those 100 kids. If it's a hard good item like a basketball, we try to donate those maybe one for every 10 to 15 kids you serve, just because we want to make sure we can, impact as many programs and kids as possible. And then it really comes down to, on each donation, how much you have in the budget for the shipping and handling fee and what equipment you need at that time. There's no max amount in terms of what you can request based on value, just based on, the equipment itself and how many kids you're serving.
So I guess that brings up an interesting question as it relates to our current environment with COVID, because typically one basketball or soccer ball for a group of athletes would be sufficient, right? You can share balls and you can use them. In today's environment, there's a lot more concern about sharing equipment, and a lot of the training is happening virtually. So kids who may have gone to basketball practice or soccer practice now need to sort of have their own ball to go to the park or dribble in the driveway or, the street, hopefully not a busy street, but to be playing in an environment which is different from what they normally would do. So give us a sense of how you think that might work in terms of the way that you evaluate those requests.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great point. And it's definitely something we recognize as a company. As of right now, we're working with our equipment partners and other funders and, assessing what the needs are in the community, that it is going to be now, one soccer ball is probably only good for one kid now and not for 10 to 15 kids. So we're currently working with our partners and funders and to draw up, these kits that we can get shipped out to programs that, for individual, kids that they need on that type of basis. Currently, right now, with our inventory and how much we have, we're still working off that allocation rate. But again, that's a conversation we can have with the program. If they reach out and say, hey, we have 30 kids and we want, 15 or 20 basketballs, we can have that conversation with them to determine that need. But we are working as a company and to get in more of that inventory and what the need is in the community out. It's going to take time, but we're making great strides already towards that.
Fantastic. Well, you guys have given us a great amount of information. We appreciate you taking the time to share that system. I think it was very helpful for everybody to understand what the process is, both so they can work directly with their organizations and, from our end, so we can help other organizations walk through that process. We continually get requests all the time from groups that are looking for equipment, from individuals, and then now we can understand how to point them to get this done through their group. Thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate your time. Everybody else that joined us, whether you're live or watching this later, thank you for tuning in and looking at this. We hope you'll check out what Good Sports is doing. We hope you'll join us next week for our town hall on racism. All the specifics are up on the site, and it's going to be a really impactful day. Thank you to everybody for being here. Again, go check out our social media and sites so you can see upcoming events and webinars and podcasts and everything that we have going on. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy.